Good day, everyone. Welcome to Bobo video lectures. In our last class, we discussed about cost of capital, the introduction to cost of capital, which I categorized it into three, which is cost of equity, cost of preference share, and the cost of debenture. And I was able to touch cost of equity in my last class, and I split it into two, which is cost of equity with growth and cost of equity without growth, which I explained, and I gave us the different method of determining your growth. If you do not have that knowledge, kindly go back to the cost of capital part 1 of this lecture so that you can have a good understanding of cost of capital of the introduction. Now today we'll be starting with cost of preference share / debenture. I'll be taking the two together because they are so much similar. They are similar. Now, preference share, we can subdivide preference share into two under cost of capital, which is the irredeemable preference share and the redeemable preference share. The same thing goes to debenture, irredeemable debenture and redeemable debenture. Now, for irredeemable preference share, what do I mean by irredeemable? Irredeemable means that those class of securities that cannot be repurchased, at any particular period of time. So for cost of irredeemable preference share, KP is equals to DO all over PS x div. So this is the formula, where your DO is the latest occurring dividend, your KP is cost of irredeemable preference share, and price per share, PS is price per share excluding dividend. Preference share does not have with or without growth because their dividend is always fixed. So it is only equity that have with growth or without growth. So preference share does not usually have with growth or without growth because their dividend is usually fixed in nature. Now, for cost of irredeemable debenture, debenture use interest. Debenture use interest. I open bracket 1 minus T, that's 1 minus tax rate, close the bracket all over PS x int, where your I is your interest, your T is your tax rate, your PS x int, price per stock. We use stock for debenture. Cost of redeemable preference share or debenture. Now, redeemable means that at any point in time or at a predetermined date, the shares can be bought back, that is, can be repurchased by the company. Now, whenever you have preference share or debenture that are redeemable, they follow similar step. And the step you are going to use, the method you are going to use is you are going to use the internal rate of return approach, IRR approach. Now, under this method, you will follow two steps. The first step is the trial and error. The trial and error means you have to determine two percentage. One must give you positive NPV and the other must give you negative NPV. Under no circumstances must you have positive NPV and positive NPV, or negative NPV and negative NPV. That is, what I'm trying to tell you is that percentage you use, the two percentage you are using, one must give you negative NPV, the second must give you positive NPV. Now this is the short method. If you use a percentage, let's say 10%, and that percentage gave you a negative NPV, reduce the percentage, that is this percentage, Assuming we did this to be 10% and it give us negative, reduce the percentage so that it's going to give you positive NPV. Let's assume that the when you did your positive NPV and you get negative, you now reduce it, it's also giving you negative again. You still keep reducing so that it's going to give you your positive NPV. And if you use 10% and the 10% give you positive NPV, you are going to increase the percentage to give you negative NPV. In a nutshell, if you pick a percentage that gave you positive NPV, the next thing is for you to determine the negative NPV. So you have to increase the percentage, the discounting factor, so that it will give you negative NPV. And if otherwise, reduce the percentage to give you positive NPV. So this is the approach. PS X int, the cash flow. This is the format. Just know the format. So I will solve a question that will cover everything. So, and I said note, where the first discounting factor gives negative NPV, reduce the discounting factor to get positive NPV. But if otherwise, increase the discounting factor to give negative NPV. And whenever you are solving for preference share, do not include tax. So interpolation. The second step is the interpolation. The first step is trial and error. The second step is the interpolation. Then the formula is LR plus, open brackets, this NPV LR all over NPV LR minus NPV HR times HR minus LR. So lower rate, where your LR is lower rate, that is the lower discounting factor, the NPV of LR, that is the NPV of the lower rate, that is NPV of lower discounting factor, NPV of higher discounting factor, which is this, then higher rate, then lower rate, stuff like that. Now there are some tips you should know if you want to determine whether this preference share or debenture is redeemable. Number one thing is you'll be given redemption price or value. Number two, you'll be given the year of redemption, that is the year at which the shares or debenture will be repurchased by the company. This is it. This is the tips. So you'll be given the year at which the shares or debenture will be repurchased by the company. So I'll go on by solving an illustration which takes into consideration all what I've explained earlier. Illustration 1. Kowi Nigeria Limited, the subsidiary of Bubu Nigeria PLC, has the following in its capital structure: a 7% redeemable preference share having a nominal value of 200,000 naira. The shares are currently quoted at 70 kobo per share. B. 500,000 naira 12% irredeemable debenture currently valued at 150%. C. 300 naira 10% redeemable preference share. The shares are redeemable in 7 years' time at a price of 10% above the current market price. The current market price is 1 naira 50 kobo per share. D. 100,000 5% redeemable debenture currently valued at par. The debentures were sold in 2010 but will be repurchased in 2020 at a price of 120 naira. Assume tax rate is 30% and required. Determine the cost of capital for each component of capital structure. So the first one is 7% irredeemable preference share. So since it is irredeemable, you add cost of preference share irredeemable, which is DO all over P. So this is the result. So the third question there says that 300,000 10% redeemable preference share. The shares are redeemable in 7 years time at a price of 10% above the current market price. The current market price is 1 naira 50 kobo. Now remember, I gave you a format for this, so which the format is this here, the format is this and this. So you use two steps. The first step is the trial and error format. Then the second one is the interpolation. So you have to follow these two steps. Now remember, this is a preference share, redeemable preference share. So you have our cash flow, the year, discounting factor. So let's pick 10% on assumption. You can start with 10% first on any question. Then your PS XD, which is the market price per share. They said the shares are redeemable. The current market price is 1 naira 50 kobo. Have you seen it? So that's, you can 1 naira, or you can say 150 kobo. 150 kobo. The next one is the dividend. Since it is ordinary shares, you use dividend. So dividend, the current dividend is 10%. So 10% of 1 naira, that's 10 kobo. Do not use 10% of the market value. No, 10% of the par value, which is the nominal value of 1 naira, that's 10. Remember, I said do not include tax. Do not include tax when you are calculating for preference share. Have you seen it? So I will not include tax. So the next one is the redemption price. So the redemption price is, they said the shares are redeemable in 7 years time at a price of 10% above the current market price. So definitely you want to increase this current market price by 10%. So hence the redemption price will now be 165 kobo. 165 kobo. So that's the redemption price. That is 110% of 150. So that's that about that. So here is always year 0. For your dividend, remember the shares are redeemable in 7 years time. This one will now be from year 1. The shareholders will collect dividend from year 1 to year 7. Then redemption price, the shares will be redeemed in 7 years time. That's year 7. So then we are going to do the discounting factor. The discounting factor for this, in year 0 is always 1. Remember, we are using this formula. Look at the formula we'll be using for the discounting factor. If you are doing only for a particular year, you will use 1 plus r raised to power minus n. That's what you use for either this or this. But for this one, look at this one. This one is not 1 year. This one is from year 1 to year 7. If you are doing from year 1 to year 7, you will use 1 minus open bracket 1 plus r raised to power minus n all over r. So this one is the cumulative discounting factor. Are you getting it now? This is the cumulative discounting factor. This formula works for from year 1 to any year, be it year 10, year 20, year 15, stuff like that. So remember, so this is the end result. So this one is for this, while this and this are for this. So if you say your R is the 10%, which is 0.1, your N is the number of years, which is 7 years. If you are doing for this 7 years, you are doing for this one is year 0. So you pick, if you are doing for only a particular year like this, you pick this. If you are doing for this, you pick this. So here we have 150. So this times this, the discounting factor multiplied by the cash flow will give you this, times this, we have 48.684, then 165 times 0.5132. Remember, this one is an outflow. So minus 150 plus here we have a negative NPV of 16.638. Now, since you know we have a negative NPV, and I said whenever you have a negative NPV, you are going to reduce the percentage so that it will give you positive NPV. Remember, I said we have to get both positive and negative. So we've gotten negative, now it remains positive. So I will assume a discounting factor of 30%. Let's just say 30%. You can pick 5%. It's not compulsory you pick 3%. So I just pick 3% randomly. So here always 1 because it's year 0. 0 is always 1. Then this, you are going to use this formula, but the R will change to 0.03, which is 30%. 1 minus open bracket as 6.230. So you will see that we've gotten our both negative and positive NPV now. So that requirement, the step 1 have been accomplished. So step 2 now, interpolation. So where your KD is equals to LR lower rate plus NPV of lower rate so your lower rate, which is your lower discounting factor, between this one is the lowest discounting factor, that's 30%, plus the NPV of the lower discounting factor, NPV of the lower discounting factor minus NPV of the higher rate minus 16.638 times higher rate, which is 10, lower rate, which is 3. 30% of So the answer is 8.15%. So that's for the preference share, that is redeemable preference share. Now, the next in the requirement is 100,000 5% redeemable debenture currently valued at par. Debentures was sold in 2010 but will be repurchased in 2020 at a price of 120. So this is the redemption price. See, this one is also redeemable. This is the redemption price. The year is the difference between the two. That is from 2010 to 2020. So the key aspects. Remember, it is redeemable. You are following this step. I will also assume 10% and the present value. PS X int. Remember, we are doing debenture, so you'll be using interest, not. So this is the end result of this. Remember, the cash flow, which is the PS X int, that is the market price, is a par, which is 100 naira, which I've discussed that earlier. Interest is 5%, which is 5%, that is 5% of 100 naira. Then tax 30% of 5 naira, that's 1.5. Then the redemption price, they said it is 1 naira 20 kobo. It is 120 naira, sorry. Year, the first year is always year 0, that is now, presently, it's always year 0. So from year 1 to the redemption year, from 2010 to 2020 is 10 years. That is, it starts from 2011, 11, 12, 13, 14, stuff like that. So to 2020, that's 10 years. You do same for tax. Remember, I use tax because I'm dealing with interest. You understand that? So redemption price is 120 naira. So in year 10, that's when they are going to redeem the debenture. So then remember the formula I gave you. If you want to use this just for a particular year, you use 1 plus r raised to power minus n, where this r is the percentage at 0.1, then n is the number of years, 0, year 0. It's going to give you 1, since anything raised to power 0 is 1. So then for this and this, because they are cumulative from year 1 to 10, just say 1 minus open bracket 1 plus r raised to power minus n all over r. This is the formula you use for these two. So your r is 0.1, your n is 10. So here too, you are going to use this format, remember. So same thing applies to this. So when I did this, I first got my negative NPV, then the second one I got my positive NPV. So that's that about that. So if you have any question, feel free to ask me. So let's go to the cost of capital, a weighted average cost of capital, called WACC. Call it weighted average cost of capital. That is the combination of all cost of capital when weighted together. That's what we call WACC. That is, you want to find the aggregate of those cost of capital. You want to find the average of all which the company used to finance its operation. So this is the format. Capital structure, you list them, the market value of those capital structure, of those component of capital structure, then the cost of capital you derive from them, then their returns, you multiply this by this, will give you the returns, then you divide. Are you getting it? It's just like saying f x fx. Are you getting it? It's just like finding your mean for a group data, f x fx. So summation fx all over summation f. It's just like that. So let's look at an illustration. ABC PLC is trying to decide the cost of capital discounting rate to apply to the evaluation of investment projects. The fixed assets and working capital of the company are financed by this: ordinary share, preference share, redeemable debenture, like this. Outstanding dividend declared but not yet paid are they've given us so in the year just ended, the company recorded profit after tax of 36,000, out of which 12,000 was retained. The company has maintained a constant dividend policy of 2/3 payout. Retained earnings are invested, generate regular return on capital employed of 15% after tax. The ordinary shares are currently valued at 32.4 per share. The current yield on preference share is 15% per annum. The irredeemable debenture are currently quoted at 18 naira. The redeemable debenture are quoted at par and redeemable at a premium of 10% in 10 years time. Company income tax rate is 40%. Estimate show all the relevant workings in the company's cost of capital. So now each component cost of the capital, we have the equity, so we are going to solve for cost of equity, cost of preference share. Look at undated. Undated means it is irredeemable preference share. 8% redeemable debenture. We are going to solve for this, and we are going to solve for this. 8% redeemable debenture. There is a difference between these two. Don't be fooled because they are both 8%. One is irredeemable and one is redeemable. So they are two, they are separate. So now let's start from our cost of equity. Now remember, I told you in our last class, I said cost of equity can either be with growth or without growth. For this, let's check maybe the cost of equity is with growth or without growth. Now you will see that they said in the year ended, the company recorded profit after tax of 36,000, out of which 12,000 was retained. You can see retained earnings here. The company has maintained a constant dividend policy of 2/3 payout. You can see the retention, the dividend policy payment. Out of this 36,000, the company paid out 2/3. Definitely 1/3 was retained. Are you getting? That's the proportion of retained earnings to total earnings. At a glance, you see that you'll be using the Gordon method to determine your growth here. You can see that this thing is with growth. So you have to be very, very wise. Now, they said the company has, they now said, retained earnings are invested to generate regular return on capital employed. They've given us our return on capital employed. Definitely, we are to use cost of equity with growth. Hence, we do KE is equals to DO bracket 1 plus G all over PS X div plus G. Our dividend here. And another thing, let's check maybe the PS is cum div or X div. Remember I said when dividend is about to be paid, it is cum div, but if it has been paid, it is X div. Now you see that this dividend here, declared but not yet paid, it is definitely the ordinary shares is in cum div. Even the preference share itself is in cum div. So we are going to convert it to X div. Now dividend in the question, they said the dividend is 2/3. That is, my dividend is 2/3 of 36,000 to give us our dividend. That's 24,000 is the dividend. So now you now say your dividend per share 24,000. You can see that it is even in line with what is here, 24,000 dividend. You can see 2/3 of this 24,000. Are you getting it now? So all over the number of ordinary shares 250,000. You can see that the ordinary share capital here is 250,000. But we are going to determine the number of ordinary shares. Definitely, to determine the number of ordinary shares, you divide this by this to give you the number of ordinary shares. 250,000 divided by 0.25. That's 24,000 divided by 1 million shares. That will give us 0.024. So here we have 0.024. 1 plus your growth. So let's determine our growth now using Gordon. G is equals to RB, where your R is your return on capital employed, which is 15%, 0.15 times your B is your retained earnings. He said out of which 12,000 was retained. So 12,000, your B is equals to 12,000 all over 36,000. That will give us 0.3333. So if you multiply, G is equals to 0.15 times 0.3333. That will give us 0.05, which is approximately 5%. So you write 0.05 is your G all over PS X div. Remember, the price per share is in cum div because the dividend has not been paid, though it has been declared but it has not been paid. So the number of the ordinary shares are currently valued at 32.4 kobo. So you say 32.4. Remember, this thing is in kobo and this one is in naira. That's 0. You divide it by 100 to convert it to kobo. 0.324. Are you getting? This thing is in kobo, so that's 0.324 minus 0.024. There won't be consistency if you should write this here 32.4 kobo. Are you getting it? You have to convert this to kobo, this one to kobo. Since this one you have to convert it to naira. Since this one is in naira, this one must also be in naira. Assuming this one is in kobo, are you getting it now? That is 2.4 kobo. Then you can also write this one to be 32.4 kobo. Remember, I've deducted my dividend there plus 0.05. That's 13.4%. Or if you don't want to do it like that, you just say 2.4. That is, if you want to convert this one, you can say 2.4. If you multiply by 100, you convert it to kobo. 2.4 kobo, open bracket, 1 plus 0.05 all over 32.4 kobo minus 2.4 kobo plus 0.05 give you 13.4%. So that's for the cost of equity. The next one, let's do for preference share. The preference share is undated, that is irredeemable. Remember, it is DO PS X div. Now the dividend of the preference share is 6%. 6% of 100,000, that's 6,000. Same thing as what has been declared here, 6,000 naira. So that's it. And mind you, in this question, they also said that the current yield on preference share is 15%. The meaning of this is that they've already given you the cost of preference share. They only want you to find the market value. You see that they did not give you market value in this question, but they've given you the current yield. So the next step is to find the current market value of the preference share. Now, so our KP is given us to be the current yield is 15%. Right here 0.15 open bracket. Your DU, which is the dividend, current dividend is 6%. That is 6% of 1 naira. That's 6 kobo, 0.06 all over the price, the PS. So what they want us to derive here is the price per share, which is not given to us in the question. So we are going to look for it by ourselves. That's 0.15x is equals to this, and divided by 0.15. Here we have 0.4. Hence the PS is 40 kobo. So that's the PS. So the next thing is the 8% irredeemable debenture. 8% irredeemable debenture. That's the second one. The third one, irredeemable debenture. Remember, this one is irredeemable preference share. So they said the irredeemable debenture are currently quoted at 80 naira. So KD 80 naira. So remember, we are using interest 1 minus tax rate all over PS X int. So the interest rate in this question is the 8%. 8% of, so that's 8 naira, 8% of 100 naira. The PSX int, the 100 naira, remember I said do not make a mistake of multiplying the interest, this percentage, by the market value. No, always multiply it by the nominal value. So PSX int is, they said 80 naira. But now remember that all interest for the debenture have been paid. Definitely this is in X int. So So that is that about that this aspect. So just like the previous illustration I've done, so that's the same step. Just follow, go through the question and you understand how I got those figures. So the next thing is the work to determine the weighted average cost of capital. So for the work, remember I gave you a format, this format, weighted average cost of capital. So that's what we are going to use. So the capital structure, we have the market value, we have the cost of capital, and we have their returns. So under the cost of capital, we have the equity, which is the ordinary shares. The ordinary shares, always put market value. The 250,000 here is the nominal value, and we need market value. Remember when we were solving in the first instance, I determined the number of ordinary shares to be 1 million ordinary shares. So, and the market value, x int, the market value is this, x div, which is this, but this value is in cum div. So I deducted the dividend from it to make it x div. So that will be 30 kobo. So that will be 1 million shares times 30 kobo. That's 300,000 naira. And remember that the cost of capital here that we got is 13.4%. So you write your 13.4%. The next one, we have our 6%. Remember, I'm following this format too. 6% preference share. 6% preference. Remember, it is 1 naira, the nominal value, then 100,000 naira in total. So 100,000 shares, you multiply it by the market value. So the market value of this is 40 kobo, as we've solved earlier. 40 kobo times 40 kobo, that's 40,000. And the cost of preference share is 15%. Next, we have 8% irredeemable debenture. Now, the 8% irredeemable debenture, I have 500,000 naira. But the 500,000 naira has already been multiplied by 100 naira per stock. So definitely, in order for you to determine the market value, they said the market value is 80 naira. So 80 naira, this is the market value of the redeemable debenture. But this one has already been multiplied by 100 naira. So in order for you to determine the market value, just find the proportion, 80 all over 100. That is, the meaning of this is divide this by 100 so that you get the number of stock there. Then you multiply it by 80. That's what I did. So that will give us 400,000 naira. And remember that the cost of debenture, irredeemable debenture, is 6%. Then the last on my list is the 8% redeemable debenture. So the debenture is 750,000, and in the question they said the redeemable debenture are quoted at par. So definitely I'm still going to write this there, 750,000. This is the par, and the cost of debenture is 6.14. So I will multiply this by this. So you divide this by this. So that's that about that. Another thing is, if you go back to the illustration that I did in the first illustration that I did not do the interpolation of this requirement D, that is this. I did not do the interpolation of this. So this question 1, the first illustration that I did not do the interpolation. So you have to do the interpolation by yourself. I omitted that. So if you have any questions, so let me know. Thank you and God bless you.